touched on this last week when the reports came out towards the end of last week that Taylor Swift had turned down an opportunity to headline the Super Bowl halftime show. Makes sense. Arguably the biggest music artist going right now, hugely profitable tour, at or near her peak. Don't want to count her short. She still has plenty to go. But and it's in line with the recent efforts that the Super Bowl halftime show has made, which is more contemporary acts after getting a lot of guff for older nostalgia acts year after year.
How long they go with the old? They went The Who. What else did they do after that?
The Who was basically the tipping point. I think they did Bruce. They did Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, which was actually one of my favorite halftime shows ever. And I think what was it? It might have been the Who.
That was the last one.
That was a tipping point. They did McCartney.
That was here in Miami.
Yeah, they did U2 in 01. And it was a thing. The Super Bowl halftime show was always an older act, and people became disinterested. And they decided to get more contemporary acts, and that's the place that we've occupied here, where it's basically hottest pop act, be it Katy Perry, be it Rihanna, like they're going to go with that. And even in a couple of years, maybe we'll look back on no insult to Katy Perry, but even now it's kind of weird that Katy Perry was at a level that she headlined a Super Bowl halftime show, and that's what you risk when you just go all contemporary. I don't mind it. Lady Gaga, Rihanna last year, I've enjoyed the contemporary pop acts, but I'd like a mixture of it. And the efforting to get Taylor Swift, well, I get it. She's so gigantic. Her and Beyonce occupy this super stratosphere that you almost have to make an effort there. And I think Taylor Swift and the report coming out was basically all the parties knowing that they had to at least make the offer. Otherwise, they'd be dragged on social media by her fan base, by other people. So you have to make it at least appear that you made an honest effort there. And Taylor, I think, did the NFL a solid by turning it down, because it would have been a ticketing nightmare, given what we know about the Taylor Swift tour and Ticketmaster and all the issues that they've run into. Can you imagine if Swifties and corporate football partners and football fans alike collided trying to get these tickets?
That would have been awesome. Like a fourth quarter of the stadium's empty because it was all Swifties at the game.
They
And after
all
halftime,
leave.
they're like, nah, we're good.
It's
Or like in the middle of the third quarter, everyone's just singing, we'll never, ever get back together. Like that would be amazing.
It's probably for the best for all parties that they at least let's let this thing cool down a little bit. Maybe not while she's actively touring. Maybe when we want to start it back up. But all the other backup options occupy the same kind of pop culture spot. It's been reported that Miley Cyrus is now in the mix. Prior to her latest controversy, I read that Lizzo was in the mix. You can take bets. You can take bets on this. You can take bets, and there's action on it. And there's one act that I would love to see headline the Super Bowl halftime show that seems like such a slam dunk.
All right, let's say it at the same time.
1,
3, 2, 1.
2, 3. The
Drake,
Killers.
Blue Man Group. Oh.
Why not Drake? I love the Killers, but why not Drake?
Drake is a good option, but the Super Bowl is in Las Vegas.
Sam's Town.
And this is the first Super Bowl that's ever happening in Las Vegas. And I do like when they kind of tie in the host city to the story and to the halftime show. And the Killers are one of the rare rock bands
My favorite.
that has mass appeal.
Yep.
It's one of the few remaining actual rock bands, right?
Mr. Brightside is, I think, 20 years old, and it's as popular as it's ever been. It's one of the biggest songs ever. It's basically a generation Sweet Caroline, and it's a huge monster track. They're this active touring band. They're constantly making new music.
Great leading man. Great front man.
It's relatively ignored. When the only time they really ever pay attention to rock music in the Super Bowl halftime show is when it's been a nostalgia act. We're a couple of years away from maybe the Killers being considered a nostalgia act. For some, they may already be there. And it'd be a really cool cap off to a wonderful career. I'm not writing them off. They also have plenty in front of them. But it would just be so natural. It would make, I think, generally everybody happy. They're inoffensive.
You could also mix guests. You can have some cameos in there, and because they're rock.
Yeah, they've done
but
that
they're,
before.
They're poppy, right?
They've done that before,
where
where the Red Hot Chili Peppers joined a Bruno Mars halftime show.
But I'm saying the Killers lend themselves to that. They'd be fine mixing with a cameo here or there. I like that.
It is such a perfect act for Las Vegas. And they've been doing it for so long. They have so many hits, and they're carrying the banner for rock music and a genre of music and an age group that's largely been ignored recently when it comes to booking these Super Bowl halftime shows. it seems to be a huge slam dunk, and yet it's not even being considered when it's in Las Vegas.
I couldn't agree with you more, in particular because the Killers are a band that headlines festivals a lot of the time, so they're used to playing this type of environment where they're playing to a massive crowd that, you know what, maybe 90% of the people aren't here to quote-unquote see us specifically, but we have the hits that'll carry it forward, and they're one of those bands that has so many more songs than you realize you know all the words to. Like, there are so many great Killer songs, and like you guys mentioned, with them being from Las Vegas, you could bring in all of those other Las Vegas acts that they could potentially play to. It makes so much sense, and it differs from what these last number of shows have been. The last band, quote-unquote, to play one of these Super Bowl events was Maroon 5.
Yeah,
and like Killers, that was missing the
awful.
mark completely. Where the Killers do the opposite. They bring everybody in, where Maroon 5, I feel like, isolated most of the audience.
You guys just had, what was it, The Mentalist on last week? What if you change up a halftime altogether
Yes.
and give me like a magic act?
Yeah,
I love it.
Well, if you go back to Super Bowl halftime shows, I think there was a stunt show once. I think there was an Indiana Jones stunt show that was a Super Bowl halftime show. It's actually a relatively new phenomenon. The big production of a Super Bowl halftime show. I think when the Patriots and Green Bay Packers played, it was the Blues Brothers.
Right.
It wasn't this huge marquee act, but we've gotten in there and it's become the staple of the Super Bowl recently, and it's a good pop culture moment. I'm with all of that, and I think that the Killers are the rare rock band that can actually make it work, that can be validated in that slot.
Or we combine the two, bring in the magician, right? Taylor Swift does a song, boom, make her disappear.
Yeah.
And then the Killers come on, and you kind of levitate them while they're performing. I think that would be the most amazing halftime act of all time.
That would be killer.
No. Beyonce is on the betting lines as well, and Beyonce just recently did this.
Yeah.
We
don't want her again.
I think
as much as we love her.
I love Beyonce, and I'm sure she'd knock it out the park, but I'm also not ready to just bring that right back.
Right.
I think that there should be you should not be able to do back-to-back halftime shows. You should not be able to do a halftime show within 10 years. Mm-hmm. There's only one of those gigs every year. And I like that sometimes it tells the story of music at that point in time. But there comes a time where it should be a career achievement, especially when it's in that act's hometown.
Okay.
It is a natural. Taylor Swift can headline the Nashville Super Bowl when they inevitably build their new stadium that's publicly funded. They did that in an effort to get Super Bowls. She should absolutely headline that Super Bowl, and that should be her
I
Super
will
Bowl.
say hometown for Vegas is kind of tough. You got a bunch of celebrities that have residencies there, like the Killers and Vegas. Because you think of Vegas and you think of a bunch of celebrities. And I think of all celebrities going there, you know, for their own to celebrate, to have a good time. But honestly, why not Drake? Why has that not been a discussion? Is he not even considering that? And you talk about career achievements, like this man is the most popular artist, probably more than Taylor Swift, when you consider like everybody that listens to him. I just saw a video the other day of golfers, international and American, finishing Drake lyrics. Like,
That was
I don't
impressive
think
by
they
the
can do
golfers.
that. I don't know if we have that sound, but I don't know if everybody can do that to Taylor Swift.
I'm not saying that
necessarily.
Drake shouldn't headline a Super Bowl halftime show. I'm saying that this is the Killers' one shot at the night. They can only
That's
do
a
it in
killer
Vegas.
song, guys. Shot at the night.
They can only do it in Vegas. It's the only place where it makes sense, because you can make the Drake argument in any other town, and I'd fold. It's a good argument. He's got mass appeal. He's this record-setting artist. That's what the Super Bowl is known for. But there's two rock bands from Las Vegas, and the other rock band has even more mass appeal, and you don't want Imagine Dragons on that wall.
And I'm sure Brandon Flowers is thinking, if you guys are here with me, I can make you smile like you mean it. And I should be rewarded for all these things I've done.
Yeah. I've been told that Panic at the Disco is also from Las Vegas. They just did the thing where they announced a breakup. It's a breakup to makeup, which is what a lot of bands are doing right now. We're going to take some time off just so when we come back, we can capitalize more. Because if you keep it going, it's hard to convince people that it's a big deal. I think Killers are right there on the precipice of maybe being this stadium rock band, the way that Coldplay became, the way that U2 is, the way that Red Hot Chili Peppers just graduated into. It's hard for a rock band to become a stadium act. Even the Red Hot Chili Peppers stadium tour, they needed acts like the Strokes. They really built out that card. This can help them get there. And every Killers concert I've ever been to, I've gone into, whether it be at a festival or when they're touring, I'm like, I've seen them a million times. do I really need to see the Killers again? They kind of got super popular, and they're not the band that they once were. And every time I go to a Killers show, I have the best time. I'm singing every song at the top of my lungs. I'm surprising myself at how much I know about them. They put on such a great show that it's no shame about it. I'm a Killers fan. They put on great shows. Give them this moment. They deserve it.
Greg, of all the bands, dead or alive, but let's probably stick to the dead, to the alive rather. Who would you want to see at the halftime show?
Wow. You know, as you were talking about the Killers, you had to sell me on the idea because I'm not a huge Killers fan. You know, other than Mr. Brightside, I don't know if I could name three other songs.
I bet you can.
Well, I might hear it and go, oh yeah, I know that song, and not
Somebody
even
told me you'd be able to.
I'm not a soldier. I've got soul, but I'm not a soldier.
Is it
Okay,
possible
all right,
you
yeah,
guys
I got
just
it.
like the Killers? Like, Roy, how often do you have conversations about the
got
Killers?
I don't know who they are.
I would like to have seen Taylor Swift.
soul, but I'm not a soldier. I've got soul, but I'm not a soldier. I've got soul, but I'm not a soldier.
Wow. Circumcised
No.
and no nuts.
Wow, that's a high pitch
was-
right there.
That's how hard. I nailed that. Didn't crack.
Yeah, you did.
It's impressive.
Okay.
Brendan Urie, is that the Panic at the Disco?
That's Panic at the Disco.
right. That's the lead singer,
Brandon
right?
Flowers is the
right, no,
Killers.
I knew that. He is the most talented male artist out there right now.
Brendan Urie.
Yes, Brendan Urie.
that is
I
a
would,
man.
I
That
would
is a
absolutely vote for him to just do the halftime show. on
He's a
his own.
talented guy.
He's an amazing.
His
talent.
voice is amazing.
It's actually been measured. Like he's got the highest range of anybody, the biggest range, largest range of anybody, any male performer out there right now.
That is a take.
It's a
telling you.
take.
Big range.
Pete Buttigieg sort of ruined Panic at the
Well,
Disco for a lot of people by using High Hopes as his campaign. And then it was a really corny dance that went to it when TikTok was first starting. And I think it kind of turned everybody off from Brendan Urie, unfortunately.
All right, I'm going to answer your question. I would want to see some iteration of Jack White perform at halftime.
He's not big enough, man.
I think he is.
not
I
big
think
enough.
he's bigger than the Killers.
Absolutely not.
I think Jack White.
This is the new and unimproved Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz. Gamble on by DraftKings.